I
It's 1:30. Let's call the meeting to order. Is there any public comment on any closed session items?
I don't have any comments at all.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Okay, so shall we exit, and where's the link to the closed session? Did you send it, Kevin?
Yeah, I sent that out. I sent it out about 9:30, 10.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I can resend it. If I don't see, I'll send it again.
Okay. All right.
All right, so we'll leave this. I'll start that meeting.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
Leave.
order. Sorry, the closed session went a little bit longer than planned. So we just finished our closed session, and we had no reportable action during closed session. We decided that we would put both the salary survey for the staff and Kevin's compensation on the March meeting and make some decisions then.
Perfect, thank you.
So, okay, so
Who's not up here? Oh, Rick.
roll call.
I'm here.
All right,
Spotlight him.
Vice President
Whoever's doing
Diamond.
that.
I'm sorry, did you just say me?
Yes.
Here.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Director Odette.
Yes.
President Rolfe.
Here.
And Director Stevens.
Here.
Okay, are there any special orders of business?
None for this meeting.
Are there any modifications of the agenda for staff?
Nope, pretty short agenda, so no modifications.
Okay. Is there any public comment before we start?
No public comment yet.
Okay, so moving on to action item 1, extending the resolution to reauthorize virtual public meetings. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move to extend resolution 2021-11 for 30 days as outlined in the staff report.
Second.
Is there any public comment?
The roll call? Yeah. Oh, did Robert Masquet have a public comment? Sorry, I didn't see one. No?
I'd like to make a comment.
Robert, is it on the resolution to extend the meeting?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I'm a technology provider here in Truckee. I do most of my meetings on Zoom since, for the last 10 years or so with my clients. And the airport has been a very quiet place in terms of being able to reach both staff and the board. And I'd really think it would be valuable to the community if we could continue to have our meetings in person going forward. And if those meetings were also simul-streamed like we did in the past before COVID. I went to the airport today and there's no mask requirements for those that are vaccinated. And there are lessening restrictions across the country because of the status of the COVID pandemic. And I'd just like to see this board in person again.
Thank you, Robert. Is there anyone else?
I would just like to second that, what Robert said. I've not had the opportunity to attend a board meeting, and I would like to do that in the near future.
All right, thank you. Roll call? Oh,
I'd also like to be the third person. I would love, in fact, after the situation in July, I attended the 2 meetings before he went to Zoom. The attendance was great. I feel that people, I have too many Zoom meetings in my own business. And I think since the latest appears to be going back to live type meetings, not universally, but many more people are than aren't, that it's time. In fact, I've watched some of the meetings, and please don't take this wrong, but I think sometimes the board members, some are sitting at home and would appear doing something other than what's being discussed at the board meeting. So that's my input. Please go back live.
Thank you, Norm. Anyone else?
I will just quickly on that topic, later on the agenda, scheduled for upcoming meetings, we can talk about that a little bit more as to when the board might want to do that or what the board might want to do.
Great. All right, roll call.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Kat, but I think in last month when we looked at the revision of the schedule, wasn't it that after public comment that we would have a chance for the board to discuss again before we took a vote?
Yes.
Because the reason I'm asking is I'm ambivalent as to whether or not we go back Zoom or both. I see access issues both ways for people. But I'd like to know what, if anybody on the board, are there any concerns about health or about any other reason that we would want to not do that from your perspectives?
I think I don't have any health concerns at all, but I think that we certainly get a lot more participants on Zoom than we ever got in person. So,
Here.
A lot more. We never had 25 people in the room. That's how many are on right now, and we've had over 100 in the last 12 months.
And if
I
somebody's
miss
out of
dinner.
and cookies,
Can I ask a question real quick? Josh, what are you seeing the future of the state of California doing with these virtual meetings?
I think it's a really good question, Kevin, that frankly we don't necessarily have an answer to right now. The AB 361 is tied to the statewide declaration of emergency, which is currently set to expire at the end of March, although the governor's indicated they may look at extending it further and likely would. The thing I would note is that making this finding today under AB 361 doesn't preclude us from meeting in person. What it does is just allow us to have a hybrid option. So what I think, Kevin, circling back to your question, what I think, a number of agencies will likely do going forward is start looking at hybrid meeting options. And if we make these findings, that still allows us to have that as a possibility, even if a majority or all of the directors are meeting in person.
define hybrid.
It would be with one or more, either one director or attendees, having the option to view the meetings or participate in the meetings remotely. And the benefit, of course, with making these findings under AB 361 is that it allows a director to participate from a remote location like their house without posting that location on the agenda and having that as a public public location.
Well, I hate to be the outlier here, but I do continue to have health concerns. And the school board went to that hybrid option here in Truckee for quite some time. And it became so untenable with people not respecting their mask request. I guess it can't be really a mandate at some point, that they had to go back to all virtual. So maybe, I'm willing to try, but I would like to think that there's an option to back out if things become dangerous.
I'm a big fan of this hybrid idea. And I don't mind people meeting with me when I'm someplace else. Of course, they'd have to come to Maui in April.
So if I understand, Josh, just to reiterate what you're saying, if we vote to extend this in 30 days, we could still choose in that meeting to go in person, or maybe we have a hybrid option where some of us are there in person and others are in Zoom. Because I do, with what Teresa had said, I agree. I love seeing a lot of people participating in these meetings. And I don't know, I mean, I know we're all kind of zoomed out, but it is having an impact on attendance, and that can't help but improve the process, I think. But
and Director Diamond, the answer to your question is yes. We would still have the ability to meet in person or meet in hybrid if we make the findings today. And for that reason, I would recommend the board, extend the resolution just to keep the option open.
And Kevin, do we have the technology available to do hybrid? I don't think we do.
I'll have to check with Mike Cook, but I would imagine we do. That we
did in July.
Yeah, we can make that work.
We were all there. We had people on the big screen and calling in.
Yeah, I just need to understand the staff logistics of how to set that up, because it would change how we staff our meetings. Just making sure we might have to have an extra person in there to help with that. But I just have to do a little bit of work there. But I attend a lot of those too. I know my TNT TMA board meetings are hybrid like that, and some are there, some are on virtual, so we could look at that.
Okay.
Then I let my motion stands then.
So roll call. Is that where we are? Vice President Diamond?
Yes.
Director Hetherington?
Yes.
Director Odette?
Yes.
President Rolfe?
Yes.
Director Stevens?
Yes.
Okay. So the goal setting workshop. I hate to put anybody on the spot necessarily, but I really liked David Diamond's philosophical musings on how we should be looking at goals. David, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Thanks for that, Kat. Yeah, my thought on this, and this is coming from experience in my professional life, is that it's important that an organization or an individual has goals, right? That they can be like the SMART concept about them being specific, measurable, actionable, blah, blah, blah. I feel like at the airport, we bounce around a lot about, we should talk about this and we should talk about that. And now we're going to talk about this, but we don't put stuff into cohesive strategies that will definitely span more than a year. Like for example, our hangar discussion, this is going to go on for years. This is a huge discussion that has many sub items, but I feel like if we don't structure it as that we'll never get to those specific items, because we can't determine what a good first step is or second step and follow up and all that stuff. And then on some of the issues like the greenhouse gas stuff, this is just not something the airport is going to solve, right? This is a global problem. It's a guiding principle for us. Certainly in the decisions that we make, we want to factor that in. But for things like that to be specific goals of ours, I feel like is just setting the organization and specifically Kevin, if his goals are tied to that, setting him up for failure. So what to summarize what I had in that outline was that instead of specifying like 5 or 6 goals right now, I would like us to focus on guiding principles that we can agree on that might be based on our mission statement or the revised mission statement. And then under that pillar or the category of those guiding principles, start to list, kind of like we have like the ongoing, the rolling agenda, having the ongoing rolling goals. And from that list, decide what are we going to do in 2022 and what are we going to do in 23 and 24 and so forth, in kind of a more organized way. That's basically the gist of it.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that was really well thought out. And I agree that we don't want to set Kevin up to fail. So I'm just wondering if you want to go through, I thought you had some really good examples here. If you want to go through those examples. I
could do that, or if you feel like it would be, I would sort of assume everybody's read it, so I'm not sure if maybe we want to discuss more is this a concept that everybody likes, and if it is, then maybe we could start going down that, deciding like what some of those principles would be, or if maybe the majority of us want to just cut to the chase and define some goals. So that's something, a good place to start.
I'm open either way.
Can I just ask one question real quick? And I agree. I really appreciated the way David had laid these out. It starts to kind of put the flavor of a strategic plan. The airport had one. It's no longer. I mean, there's pieces of it that are relevant, like our open space strategy. I still think pieces of those are, but the last time we pulled it out and even worked on it was like in 2014, and we took it off the website because it's just not really relevant to what it hasn't been discussed by this board since then, or by any board. So are we kind of thinking some kind of because as you talked, David, getting the plan together for 2, 3, 4 years of strategic objectives, things that we want to work at, would it be something like that we would start working towards?
I mean, it could be that. It would guide everything, which would include a strategic plan. But if you think about the things that we've got, like we talk about the like noise and annoyance, it's like, until somebody comes up with a way to silence airplanes are going to make noise. And if there's an airport here, there's going to be noise. So, but if we have that as a guiding principle toward the different things that we want to consider to address that, I think it gives us some structure, and it also helps the public when they are participant in the process of discussing our goals, that we're not just coming from every possible direction, that we've got, that these are the categories that matter to us, and here's the list of goals that we've got for those categories. So instead of somebody in a public comment saying, well, I think painting the terminal should be a goal for 2022, and we're thinking like, wow, that's not even on the list of possibilities, that we might all have a more productive discussion if we were to see kind of a menu of options. Yeah. And that we then as a board would know that all of our goals in 2022 are not serving one particular category, that we're in fact going across the board to all these, addressing each of the guiding principles that matter and choosing a goal to focus on in there. And then the last part about it, Kevin, just being that it's a negotiation with you as a general manager as to what is actually possible within the confines of a year, because a lot of these things are going to take, like flight procedures. It's like we knew that was going to be a multi-year process going into it. So instead of status of flight procedures, we might be able to like say some specifics about that stuff. So, I mean, to me, the first step would be, if everybody likes this approach, that we define what those guiding principles are, and then we just start maybe taking the goals that the individual goals people had, and putting them in one of those structures. And then after that, then have that conversation about which ones we want to focus on in 2022.
Sounds great.
Yeah, this goes
how are we gonna
to
go about it?
That thing you had that, where you had the goals, the work plan, and the action steps and the timeline. That's what you're trying to lead towards, like that he'd had in 21.
Yeah, and I think that based on our new mission statement, like I've mentioned these 3 bullet points. One being safe, high quality services and facilities. That speaks to everything that is related to the benefits to airport users and to airplanes not landing in living rooms and that sort of thing. And then reduced impact on neighbors and the environment goes to the noise and annoyance and greenhouse gases and those concerns, and then what stuff we would put in that category. And then the investments for sustained community benefit, where and this is part of the TTCF partnership that we've got, how do we deal with that? Like, what do we want to do differently this year? Do we want to revisit policy 311? Do we want to carve out, do we want to try to get 20% more money to contribute we can get sort of specific about these things in there. So to me, the first step would be, I'll just throw those 3 bullet points out and just say to the board, do you like these? Do you want to add some? Do you want to take some away or change them? Or What do you think?
Those 3 bullets are perfect.
I think it's great place to start.
Can I add one more?
Mhm.
So another one would be like facilities investment. And that might be planning, and planning may be a better word, but, just what I'm thinking of is the tower and hangars. Those are some things that.
Wouldn't that be in our?
It's a facility. That's the first bullet. Yep.
Yeah.
And where does revenue and cost allocation analysis fit in? That we just spend all this time and money getting together, which, kind of flows into all of them. How does, because I think, with the specificity, as I wrote in my goals, reduce X by Y. Where does that fit in your view?
To be honest with you, Mary, there was one 4th bullet that I played around with in my brain, and I ended up not putting it in there, and it was one of administration. That would address that. It would address budget issues. It would address salary issues and all that. And then I thought, I'm not sure that that's a guiding principle. Those are more action items that we would put in something. So I would think, I guess, depending on where, the allocation study, I think in a way is a bit of an anomaly, because it's one thing that goes across the entire scope of everything, right? So I think maybe it's not wrong to say that a particular goal serves 2 or 3 categories, so we might find something like that there. But I was just trying to think in terms of if we think about the cost allocation, what's our goal for the cost allocation is to see how we're doing financially, to see what amount of money, community money, is going here, and what, basically a self-analysis thing.
It's to inform.
Yeah.
But, so it kind of flows into all.
Do you mind, Kat? Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the prior meeting, and David just said it again, in the prior meeting, Mary brought it up, but David just said the community's money. And I just want you guys to understand, it's not the community's tax dollars, it's the property owner's tax dollars. 75% of whom don't live here full time. I think that we should use the right vernacular when we're talking about what we're going to do with the tax money.
Property tax.
Just clarification.
I don't disagree with you, Teresa. I think it's fair to recognize that money is coming from property owners, and then it's also fair to recognize that the airport's impact is on everybody who's here. So it's confusing sometimes, and it's easy to speak of the community, but you're absolutely right. It is property tax. Being one of those people who pay it, I share your sensitivity to that.
So, Dave, I'm taking copious notes here. Could you give me those 3 categories again? I think I might have got one off there.
The first one was safe, high-quality services and facilities.
Okay, that's what I missed. Yeah.
So these are like the overarching goals, but they're not necessarily they're not specific that then become what we review Kevin on. The things we review Kevin on are the work plan and the action steps.
That's exactly right, Mary. So these are guiding principles, and they're basically extracted right from the mission statement. So it's like taking the mission statement and saying, if we really think that this is more than words, then we extract these 3 pillars from it, and then we start feeding goals into that. Like, for example, the hangar discussion would be a safe, high-quality services and facilities that would fall under there, and then the hangars as a topic would have their specific goals that we could then stuff into a given year. And then it would be the same thing with like if you think about all the ongoing discussions that the airport has had, at least in the last year that I've been here, it's not difficult to take some of those things and find a home for them, like the 1634 decision or discussion. Our entire purpose for discussing that is number 2, is reduced impact on neighbors. So it fits in there, even though it could be seen as like, well, it's an airport, it's a grounds, it's a structure thing. And if we look at something like the control tower, that's definitely a high quality services and facilities that we hope would also serve the reduced impact principle there. So it's just kind of like a way of just categorizing stuff so that when we're making the decisions that we've got some guiding principles so that we know that we're at least hitting all three of these categories each year, or unless we specifically intend to not hit one, but just that we're not omitting something. And again, like we've got a structure for a conversation with the community.
So just as I'm kind of taking notes on this, we've got these three categories, which are essentially the dissecting our mission statement, right? And then we're taking all these things that we're going to talk about that you all have here, and other things we'll talk about, till 4:30, and putting them underneath those things. And then I can take that with the work plan action steps timeline, kind of like I did last year, and lay them into that kind of framework. That essentially does become what some might look at and go, hey, that looks a lot like a strategic plan, as long as it's actionable. That would be the one thing. But
I think it would be fine. And the only thing that I would add to that, Kevin, is that if we take those individual goals, is to identify that they are in fact actionable and achievable goals.
Yeah.
Or if they are topics under which we need to define some actionable or achievable goals. Like, deal with hangers is not a goal. It's a topic that has a bunch of goals that will go on for years. So that's it.
I think that's a really good place to start. I like the framework. I guess I felt like with the cost and allocation study, that was going to be a tool that we could use, or lens through which all of our decisions coming forward that we view through, which may mean we have to really revisit some basic costs and expenditures before we get those done. So I'm just trying to say, I think some of these might just take longer. Some of these goals take longer because we're going to have to make some big decisions ahead of actually acting on them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense to me. Yeah. But I think we can, if we want to go down that road, we start this process. While we're in the middle of the process, we might find that there was a guiding principle that we forgot that we want to add. It doesn't have to be, I base those just on the mission statement, but that doesn't mean that the mission statement doesn't account for everything. So there's some other stuff that we might want to put in there. It's basically, and going to, Mary has brought this up before, and I brought it up before too. It just goes to culture, right? It goes to who the who and for whom of the airport. Who are we? What is important to us? And why are we here? Like who are we doing this for? I feel like we're often all over the place in this, and there is a reality that every 2 years there's an election, and potentially 2 new or 3 new people might come in that time frame, and everything changes. But if you think of a lot of companies of the world, if it's Oracle, or if it's Apple, or if it's Google, they all have boards of directors, but who the company is doesn't change every time new people are brought in or shuffled out of the board, because there's a culture there. People know who they are. And I would like us to be able to define that in conjunction with the community, so that our expectations of the airport are reasonable. That people will hear airplanes. The airplane sound is not going to go away. Even if we move them off of a different runway in a different direction, even if we do the flight procedures, all of these things, we just want expectations to be realistic, and that we have some focus as a board as to what we want to focus on in a given year.
Yeah.
So what are our next steps?
Well, are we all in agreement? I don't think we've heard from Reg. Are we in agreement that we want to try this?
Rick?
I hear it. Can't you smell the smoke? I'm thinking. I have some very specific things I'd like us to talk about this year. So I am in favor of trying this format and see how it works. But there are very specific things that I would like to discuss, individual goals that I think are important that I listed on my sheet. I'm just kind of waiting to get a chance to voice those.
My suggestion.
Go ahead, Kevin.
My suggestion. Let's go through Rick's goal sheet. I've got it in front of me here, and I've got my sheet with these categories, and let's put them in there.
Good idea.
See how they fit.
All right.
Well, we discussed last year the uses of non-aviation land along Soaring Way, and we had a proposal from the hospital to build a clinic, and we didn't take action on that. By the way, they bought property and they bought a building. They bought suites in the building at the corner of Airport and Soaring Way, and they're going to do that clinic there with us or without us. They're doing it on their own, and that's fine. But I'd like to have the discussion this year of uses on the non-aviation lands on Soaring Way. I have a major...
Where do we think that fits? I mean, let's do one at a time.
Yeah.
Investments for sustained community benefit?
That's where I put it.
Could also be facilities.
Well, because Kevin had the proposal for housing.
Yeah, I kind of thought of facility, like that first one being all about the airport.
Yeah, I think the hangars and towers could go in services facilities. I think what Rick's saying is that would be that third category. And also that'll be a natural conversation we'll be able to have as we talk about land use in the master plan a little bit later in the year after we get this first phase done.
And if I recall, like our discussion on that, a lot of our concern was really about community benefit. If that was the best use of the land and I think that was what was driving a lot of that. So Rick, it's your goal. What do you think? Does it feel comfortable there?
I don't care where we do it. I just want to do it, David. I'm not into categories. I want to discuss that because I thought that use was a good use, converting vacant land into income for the airport.
I got it.
Okay.
I'd like to discuss that, and I don't care what you call it.
Investment for sustained community benefit.
So the next thing I have is housing. I was elected in 2016 on the first time, and I just went crazy on housing, and I worked so hard on it, and we approved 2 deals, and we got nothing out of it. Nothing. 2 apartments. We bought, and the second year we put $500,000 to Dollar Creek Crossing, and nothing is happening on it. Nothing. And we made a deal with Rick Lee and RPL. He built 2 units. He leased them immediately. And then in the December 2018 board meeting, we recut the deal to $40,000 a unit if he would limit the rent to $750 a bedroom. We committed only if he built them $880,000. What have we got? Nothing. He applied to the town for 22 units. He still has no units approved. They put him through that farce of SB2 thing where they really wanted him to increase the density, which would have been terrible for the neighborhood. I think we ought to kill our deal with RPL, although it's kind of
expired
killed anyway because nothing's happening. Pardon me?
It has expired. Yeah.
Well,
I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it's expired.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is we ought to continue to support the Mountain Housing Council with our contract, which is $55,000 a year. Continue to pay our overhead in the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Agency, their overhead. but I don't want to put any more money in than our overhead unless we see specific projects that benefit the airport, because I'm not so sure we need to do housing for airport employees. So, I've gone to the dark side on housing. And I'm sorry to say that because I was so passionate about it.
What do you mean we don't need to do housing for airport employees? What are you saying with that?
I said we need to discuss that, a very specific proposal. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just saying that we've been very unsuccessful about making anything happening in housing. It's hard work, and I think our intentions were good, and I think we failed. I feel like I've failed and given up on housing.
Stay tuned. There's a few things coming. One in
Yeah,
March.
that's what they all say.
Yeah, there's a down payment assistance program that we're going to be bringing forward in March.
For airport employees?
For all the employees of the JPA, that each individual agency can opt in or opt out. So that's one of the first big things you'll see coming out of that JPA that's kind of interesting.
Well, I've said that, I personally worked very hard at finding properties and looking at them and talking it up. And we've got nothing. 2 units.
Yeah.
Have we already paid the 500 on Dollar
What?
Creek?
Oh,
Have
yeah.
we already paid the 500?
It's gone. They do consult with us about what they're doing very slowly.
I thought that money wasn't gone until there was a project.
Well, you're right. If they go do something other than housing, we get it back.
Right.
The RPL is the one that we didn't have to pay anything unless they did something.
No, we did. So we were smart enough to say that we wouldn't give him a dime until he had a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
Something on the ground that could be done. And we did give him $60,000 for those 2 units, and he still rents them.
Yeah.
But I think he's lost interest too and is trying to sell the rest of the property. So I would like to talk about our housing thing. Now, Kevin, maybe the JPA will come up with something that I would be excited about.
I'm optimistic. There's some good things coming down the pike with that one.
I don't know whether you've gotten the impression I'm pessimistic.
I know, but we've got to prove you wrong.
And I'm very disappointed. Very.
And I want to give kudos to Rick and Kevin and staff, because we were the catalyst that actually started the Workforce Housing Authority and getting other agencies to the table. And I'm really proud of that for our airport, that we started these things on various working together agencies. And a lot of that was you, Rick. So thank you. And Kevin.
Well, Mary, you've said that to me before, and I appreciate it. I'm still a little discouraged.
Yeah.
But you know how that feels sometimes.
As I have 2 kids who will live and work in town, and they'll never be able to buy anything. So.
I comprehend.
Wednesday, I'll talk a little bit more about a couple opportunities that are coming up with housing. But make a big movement like you're talking about, Rick, has been hard.
The next goal I had, number 3, we've already done. We're going to put the salary study on the March agenda, so we've accomplished what I wanted. And number 4 is already on our goals, which finish the master plan revision and submit runway 1634 or whatever the number is, and get it into the FAA to see what they say.
So on one like that, as we're going through this, I'm putting that in all 3 of these focus areas.
What?
The master plan, because it applies to all 3.
That makes it tricky when we go to do an assessment.
That's kind of my question I mean, I could put it in category 3 down below, I guess. We can start with there.
Or the master plan is...
Wouldn't the master plan basically be in the first category?
Yeah, I mean,
it is about the literal plan for the airport facility, right?
Yeah, you could put it there. And then it will have some sustainability stuff in there, so it might tickle number 2. But yeah, you're probably right. It master plan would be category 1, and then I may have the sustainability portion of it in 2. Okay.
I'm done, Kat.
We definitely have a housing subcategory in sustained community benefit now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
does anybody else have any ideas for housing that we might want to just put in that category while we're talking about it?
So as far as specifics to do in 2022, there's going to be some opportunities with Hopkins Village, and that we'll talk about a little bit on Wednesday. And then also this down payment assistance program is kind of interesting and can benefit directly our employees. And then we're still looking at this possibility of some tiny homes on the airport. Those are three things that we've been kind of looking at that are more specific. But I could just put a goal in there of, direct housing assistance to airport employees or something like that. I got to figure out the wording.
And I would like on the thing I like about the tiny home concept is that I love the intent of the workforce housing JPA. As Rick was saying, the idea behind this is fantastic. Regardless or not of whether it's achieved any results, what my concern about that JPA is that we as government agencies already have put independent small businesses at a disadvantage because we can pay more. We offer healthcare, we offer retirement, and we're looking at the same pool of employees. We know that we have people working at the airport who used to work at the ski resort. So we've seen this, right? I'm concerned that as we pull more agencies into that JPA, that it becomes increasingly powerful to the detriment of small businesses whom we should not forget are also trying to pull employees in. And one of the reasons that they're having such a big hard time doing that is because of housing. So it wouldn't break my heart a lot to see the airport go down the direction of coming up with some sort of a housing proposal that benefits the small business owners throughout our region, and pulling those same agencies into that, so that while we're solving our own employee problems, we're also setting aside some resources to help solve some of the problems for the independent businesses here. Because ultimately, I think people would rather have the independent businesses around the Truckee Tahoe region than they would the government agencies. So I'd love to put that in there as my vote for a goal under that housing subtopic.
I agree.
By the way, I'm not the only one discouraged. Shauna Doherty left the town in that position.
Yeah. Okay, I got some good notes on that one. I'll craft something under that housing.
All right, Rick, is that all you have?
I'm done.
Okay.
I've said enough.
Thank you for that. And I echo Mary, and thank you for all your work on the housing, because I know that's very complex and I'm sure it's been frustrating, but it's nice to know that people are putting effort into it. Teresa, you want to go next?
Sure. Funny, I did not. This was an email I think I sent to Kevin.
Yeah, I just
my goals. I didn't know it would be here, but
sorry.
All good. The solar panel thing, apparently our hangars are not strong enough to hold them up, most of them. So why not throw some out, just some shade hangers with solar panels over I don't know what you call it, but where the transient planes park.
Yeah.
That's a thought. Something, I think it should be a goal to find some solar. Somebody put it in there. Maybe Mary, somebody put it in there about 3 months of power if something goes wrong. I think that's a fantastic goal for our community at large. And I don't know where it fits, if you're going to ask me that, David. Then I think we should go ahead.
I was going to say, the shade hanger concept, and I think I've said this before, I love the idea of shade hangers in transient parking with solar panels solving the world's problem. I don't know if it's actually going to solve the world's problems. I love that. I'm not convinced that we would want to remove any enclosed hangars to replace them with shade hangars.
I don't want to replace any, just to be clear. I'm not suggesting that at all.
Okay.
Or that we demolish.
I would agree. I would love to at least look into the feasibility of shade hangars in the transient area, because it does, for me, that there's a few things going on there. One is if we can do it with the solar panels and we can contribute to something, that's awesome. Secondarily, we know we've got people on a wait list for hangars, and when I was on that wait list for the hangar, my airplane was sitting out on the tarmac completely exposed. I would have loved the opportunity to put it in a shade hangar, even if a shade hangar was not as ideal as an enclosed hangar. I do feel like it's an opportunity that we don't have right now for those folks who have aircraft who are waiting on something there. And the other thing is revenue. So when somebody comes in and they pay us a certain amount of money for a tie down spot out in the sun, to me, there would be a whole different pricing structure for shade hangars for that. So it might be an opportunity to do that. For me, that, and then I would also, which is connected under the reduced impact, which will be under the GHG subcategory of that. I would like us to reopen that discussion with Truckee Donner PUD and maybe with North Tahoe PUD, maybe with Tahoe City PUD, and just say we have this massive, wide open land here. Do you still not want us to build solar farms? Because I remember in that last discussion, there was some pushback from Truckee Donner PUD, and I think since then, Truckee Donner PUD has heard from the community several times about you need to figure this microgrid problem out. So maybe that could be something we put under that GHG heading of reduced impact on the environment, to reopen that discussion with the PUDs and just see if we could find some just bigger solution there that could help solve some microgrid, even if it's not entirely across the region, if it's specific key buildings or my garage door openers or anything that's important to the community.
If I could add a little bit to that, what you're saying, David, I think they are more open, and talking with Brian over there, that if we have a desire to do some local solar generation, it seems like they're more open to that now than maybe they were. And the reasoning they were before is, trading solar for solar and some of those kind of things. If they're already generating solar or buying solar somewhere else, and we're putting it here, and how that all works. But I think you're right. I think they have heard a lot of comments from the community about looking at more local generation. And so I think there may be an opportunity to open that up. And then, the shade hanger thing, I just want to take a little pressure off the board a little bit, because I know you've gotten a lot of comments just recently from some of our pilots about how horrible of an idea shade hangers are in our climate and at the Truckee Tahoe Airport. I want to make sure our pilot community knows that was my idea. I brought that up about 2 years ago as an idea that we need to look at. And I think it's a great idea that we should be at least exploring. And shade hangars are all over snow country, all over the United States. I want one of them to explain to me why they wouldn't work here, but they do work at Aspen and some of these other airports where they have them. And I think, as David said, we do have demand from transients that would want to use them. And I think we do have some hangar tenants that if they had a price point that was half as much as a T hangar, that they would want that. And there are ways you can protect your plane even when there's a lot of snow. So anyways, I would like to put on exploring the shade hanger concept that could be both shade and solar as an option. And we'll look at the great work that's been done at other snow country airports that have them to make sure they're designed right.
And would they be limited just to planes and not snowmobiles and cars?
Well, all you'd be able to put in there is a plane.
I'm just trying to help you out here, Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah, the solar piece, if we're talking about my goals, is more important to me than the shade.
Yeah. Yeah, you could maybe accomplish both, is what I'm kind of thinking.
Well, yeah. And my point is, if we can't, I'd rather do the solar array somewhere, maybe not right there, and skip the hangars, the shade hangars. And that doesn't mean we all agree, and it doesn't mean it has to be our goal. It's just what my intent was with this.
It's on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Something else which is related to this, and this might be like a parent category to what we just discussed there. I would like to see us, Kevin, define a cohesive strategy under the topic of hangars that addresses all of these. We've got maintenance issues. We've got cost issues. We've got what is stored in the hangars. We've got all those. I noted a lot of those things here. Could we come up with a hangar share program to get more airplanes into empty hangars when people who are here with their second homes and the hangars empty 26 days of the month? Like I've been told before, well, our insurance won't permit that. And I kind of feel like some insurance will permit that. So maybe if we could look at that as the hangars as a topic, and then throw some darts at the board with regard to what's our plan of action for maintaining these? What's our plan of action for the construction of anything new? What's our plan of action for trying to minimize the wait list as much as we can?
I agree with that. And we have, on here, I want to make sure Dave Hoffman and Hardy and Kelly and, all my senior staff are on here too. And, jump in at any time, as part of this. But we are working on a couple of different strategies with the hangars, particularly regarding some of our 40-plus-year-old hangar rows that are challenging to repair, as well as storage. We're working on a project right now with hangar storage, but we could coalesce that all into one, instruction or one strategy.
And the policies around it, I strongly think we need to get an opt-out policy on what happens in the hangar. If a tenant wants to opt out of the button rule, whatever that might be, that they're not going to adhere to our requirements, therefore they have to fix it, something along those lines.
I'm not sure I agree. I don't think I agree with you on that. So,
well, it's just a topic. We'll get to the grinding through it, right? I want it on the list of topics
to talk about. Okay. Yeah, no, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in closed session, but as far as an open session topic, it'll be part of the hangar. That's the idea. Get it all down on paper. It'll be part of the conversation.
Okay, so and I'm cheating off of my own thing here. Under the topic of safe. I ran my spell checker. I got the high quality safe services and facilities. Based on the safety gap analysis, are there any things that you see, Kevin, that maybe Stacy could comment? Any investments that we need to be making or considering in the short term that might not be obvious to us as a board?
Let us take it. Now that we've kind of looked at this new structure of the goals, let us go back in and compare. A lot of the things that were in the gap analysis are kind of policy driven. It didn't really identify any, screaming, things that we need to go torque down or tighten. It's more of policy-driven type of things. But let us go back. It's a great point to make sure that anything that's in there is also listed in any of these categories.
Okay. And then I'll throw another one out under the safe, high-quality services and facilities. This one gets really specific. So this is up for negotiation. I would like... by our meeting in April, for us to have a proposed solution for what we do with regard to the individual services that we offer. Which ones we continue to offer? Are there any that we don't offer that we want to? Are there any that we feel are too financially bad for us that we no longer want to offer them? And what should we be charging for all the services that are continued on there? I don't know if our April meeting, if people feel like that's enough time to come to that conclusion, but I'm thinking like Kevin, for example, if you were to propose a draft to us in March that we could then discuss and then and then look at something in April.
I think we're going to in March. We should wind up the real estate fees, rates, fees, and charges that we're doing, and then you'll see on the rolling agenda in March and April, I do have on the other rates, fees, and charges, which are the very things you're talking about, including the idea of a landing fee and changing around some of the things that it talked about in the FBO fee study, particularly related, like even what we call things, a transient use fee. That's unique to Truckee. A lot of other people don't understand what that is. It's called a ramp fee. It's the same thing at other airports. So we're going to propose a bunch of those. And we'll see what we can get in March or April, but I'll try and see if we can get that ready for March. That agenda is filling up, but we do want to get those out there. And we also, and we're going through some internal review just with ourselves on things like 100 low lead and full service and all those kind of things. So we'll be able to bring forward staff's recommendations that we want to see. Overnight parking, that's another one that you'll see on there. We want to bring those things forward. We are going to want to make sure that we give plenty of time for our user community to absorb, see, and comment. And so we'll want to, look at this in March and then give some time for these folks to be able to give us their input on what we're putting out there before we make a final decision.
So,
Teresa, I'm not sure you were done.
I'm not, but I'm waiting for David to be done because I'm patient.
I'm sorry, Teresa. I thought you were. I'm gonna shut
Just
up now.
jumped the line there, David.
Sorry.
Again,
Jump back in line. You've already been in line and already had your turn.
I
Mary's
know
still
I'm
up.
talking way too much in this meeting. I get that.
Because I thought Teresa had a really
you
good.
talk too much every
control
time.
on her sheet.
Look
Yeah,
at what a great
my
job
next
he's
one.
done putting this together.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Mary. Rick's a bully.
Yeah. All right. So my other one, you guys all read it, I assume. We did in 2018. Lisa Wallace and I were on the committee, the ad hoc, for the financial study. What was that?
For economic impact study.
There you go.
It's this thing right
And-
here. I can't really see.
Yes, and we went through it. Mary was there, Rick was there. And it was absolutely staggering how much money the airport directly and indirectly brings into our community every single year. And this was 4 years ago. And at the very end, you got to basically $80 million a year, excluding real estate or property taxes. So the people that are flying in and out are coming in and eating. And, you guys all have it. You can read it. Mary's got it handy.
Have it right here.
It's also on the website if anyone else wants to read it. But you guys have said in the last 5 minutes, you've said FBO fee study, safety gap analysis study, allocation study, all as tools that we use to make decisions. We did this and we put it in a drawer. We never talked about it again. We never talked about informing the public. I really feel like the people who complain about noise and annoyance might not be as annoyed if they understood we wouldn't have sidewalks in Tahoe City without this influx of cash into our community and infinitely. We can directly say, oh, you wouldn't have a pool if it wasn't for this, but it really should be something that we use as a tool and put out to the public. Because all we do is defend ourselves against negativity.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on, as I'm remembering, it was Tom Van Berkom and I, and we tried very hard to have them address, somehow kind of capturing the costs of it as well. And they couldn't actually throw numbers, but there's quite a big discussion in that same report about the adverse impacts. So that somehow needs to be in the same envelope. And looking at it, and there's direct, indirect, and induced benefits, and there is a line in there that talks about what if there was no airport, which I'm not saying that because everybody thinks that's where I'm at, and I'm not. But the loss of economic activity, they tried to capture that as well. So, and that's part of that whole report too. So if we need to be arguing both sides of that needs to be part of the discussion.
And it was. So we just need to dig it out of the drawer, dust it off, and go through it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming David and Kat, you guys haven't seen it. It wasn't given to you on day one.
No, it
But
wasn't.
it was kind of mind-blowing to me at the time because you kind of generally know it's positive financially. I mean, everyone who bangs a hammer is in Marta's camp, right? So there's lots and lots of ways that we can use it and think about that.
But wait, so was the assumption, and forgive me because I haven't read it, but was the assumption that if the pilots who own jets left their homes in Marta's camp, that those homes would sit empty and not be filled with non-pilots?
Exactly.
It had nothing, well,
No,
it
I
didn't
don't think
address
so.
real estate at all.
Oh, okay.
But-
Okay. I was just curious about like, because yeah, I mean, I what I'm thinking, like when I'm hearing this, Teresa, what I'm thinking is like, so what would the goal be? Like, do we want to revisit that and then do an outreach campaign to promote the findings of the report? Like what would be the action item for the goal?
Well, at the very least, it should be a box we check that we considered it. We
Okay.
considered the fiscal impact when we're talking about hangars or
Gotcha.
fees or whatever that might be, that it was, a lens that we look through every
Oh, okay.
single time.
I understand.
Similarly, we should remember that we're an airport and the definition of airport. And, when we talk about taxes, and these are not goals, this is just editorial comment. We talk about what to do with property taxes. We could give them back to the people who pay them. I wouldn't mind,
We can't. That was examined many, many years ago.
Just saying, I want to stay away from the Robin Hood concept of stealing or taking money from the rich and giving to the poor. I think we need to stay focused on airport. If we're not building hangars because we don't have the money, we need to think about that. Like where we're sending our money. All part of the financial fiscal impact report and part of that lens to make decisions through.
So we're not discussing it per se here. You just want it on the list. And
I've got it under the
at such a
category
point,
3 list.
I can argue this, or this is a bottle of wine. But there are holes in the argument. I mean, who are we trying to serve? Do we only care about people who have money and want a hangar? That's
not a whole, that's a discussion point. It is a perspective, It is an opinion, and we should discuss it.
Okay.
We're just kind of doing an outline right now, right? That we're not creating our bullet point goal sheet.
I'll have that for you in March.
And that was it for me. I mean, I have some opinions when we get to Mary, but that was it for me. Your list is long and comprehensive. So,
All right, David,
I'm
would you like
finished.
to continue?
I'd love to continue. I would like as a specific goal, and I don't know, Kevin, you could help me with the timeline of this. I would like us to make a decision about 1634 so that we can either move forward or put it to rest.
Yep.
And so maybe that in that subtopic, we discuss all the things we need to find out about that, the outreach aspect of that, explaining to people what that would look like and why we would do it and all that. But I would like that to not hang out in the purgatory state for a super long time. Yeah, we did that one. Oh, and the other one is, and I'm gonna get you on this one, Kat, because I'm thinking that this is going to be one of yours too. I would like us to revisit policy instruction 311 and clean up the areas that we feel are loopholes or that are polluting the process that we have established with TCCF.
We actually did that a couple weeks ago, so that will come forward
You see, on Wednesday, we're going to talk all about it.
on Wednesday. Yeah, we did some good work on that, actually. Feel good about that.
Okay. So that was a subtopic of that. And yeah, that would be it for me. I mean, there's other stuff, but I'm thinking this is good.
Thank you. All right, Mary.
Well, in the context of, we do a study or a report and then we put it on a shelf, I want to reiterate how in 2021, we did outreach in April 28th. It was reported where we did an outreach to people who've called over the years, and 75% of respondents said everything's increased. They're still highly annoyed, that they feel that 50% said they feel their comments fall on deaf ears. We're going to an automatic. So again, it's another report that we've done. It's shelved. It's done. If we're going to use lenses when we make decisions, that's another lens that needs to be on the table. That April 28th, 2021 study. probably in the reduced impact. You know, I don't want that to just get forgotten. And then when going back through in terms of the NAP, it's like I say, that was developed in the time of when it was all VFR or 99% VFR, and by local piston operators. I can give you names, but nobody cares. And the value of that NAP, trying to thread that needle. Now we have the IFR issue, and I think like Hardy's working with the flight tech, and we have the third runway, and it's all going to change. But trying to encourage use of the NAP, I'm just saying, do we need to really look at that little diagram? Is it really helping? I think maybe the emergency landing map, kind of taking a look at those together. Is there consensus? Oh, we're just putting things on the bullet list now.
I'm putting everything on a list for next month. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of the young eagles, or just it's education. It's kind of like, let's educate people about the economic benefits. Well, let's educate the users about the impacts. It's just kind of, we don't want to just transmit to the non-flying community how great it is. We also want to we also want to educate the users what their impact is, particularly the ones that are at 4 a.m. that, if they choose to go out at 4 a.m, they've woken up 100 people or 200 or 1,000, and some of those could be nurses, some of those could be teachers. That's another lens. And, the Young Eagles, it's a great system. 2 of my kids flew in it. I was jealous because I was too old, so I couldn't go. But it's maybe getting them to think this is a great future. Electric planes are coming, but that this system also does have an impact. This 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Task to decrease encroachment into the choir hours. Can we state not authorized at night? I've been told by a pilot who flies in other places that they have that at other places. I don't know that we can do it. I'd like it looked into. In terms of the hangars, I don't know if you want me to reiterate everything that I've written down here. If you're just doing bullet points that then we're going to deal with later, they're all written down here. But the idea that, there should be a plane in the hangar, or there's a car in the hangar when the plane's not there. And there's tools to take care of, but you're not storing snowmobiles and motorcycles, and you can have your equipment to work on your plane, but it's a hangar for someone's exclusive use for their airplane. It's not for their use to store other things. That's my opinion. I would like it to be looked at to see if that is a legal operation. From what I understand, that's used in other areas. The unflyable planes, I'm still not clear on that, because I think we still have some.
Yeah, we have one.
One, good. That's reduced from 3. Clarity on inspection schedule. I'm trying to understand, are the hangars examined? The inspection period, I want to know. I again, maybe that's in the weeds, but when I hear rumors that people are cutting doors between hangar bays, that's a structural issue, and that is of a concern because these are our hangars. And they're getting exclusive use to use it, not to change it. And in fact, I was reading a lease, and it says specifically that they can't do any major adaptations unless Kevin agrees to it. And I want to know examples of what Kevin has agreed to, because it seems like it should be for an airplane or a car when they're flying the airplane. And I know we're going to be looking at the Fly Quiet Incentive Program and home basing. You're going to be bringing something next month on that, I assume. I remember you saying in March? Okay.
Yeah, March. Yeah, right. I mean, I'll work with Kat on this agenda. As you see, a lot of Marches come up a lot, but yeah, those things are just about ready to come when we can get it into an agenda.
Which goes back to when David was talking 2 years ago about, do we need more meetings? And nobody wanted them because, but we ended up having 17 meetings last year. So do we instead of trying to have one meeting that's 5 or 6 hours, do we do 2 3-hour meetings? I would prefer that. And since we're Zooming, that's, everybody's moving and schedule. It was hard to even plan this meeting. We tried to doodle this other times and other people couldn't make it. So, but if this gets so heavy, we should think about having a special meeting to chip off some of this. Other items in terms of the baggage handling, I don't think our public agency staff should be doing it. I think, just because it's done by other FBOs at other airports does not mean it has to be done. I remember Rush Limbaugh flying in here and he told our staff that we were worse than New Delhi because our staff wouldn't wash his dishes. I'm sorry, our public employee staff should not be doing baggage. They shouldn't be washing their dishes. When I ask these things, I'm always thinking, what are the boundary conditions? What are the positives and negatives of these choices? And it kind of goes to lens, like Teresa was thinking about. So when we're presented with these choices, it's what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the unintended consequences? This 10-year goal, we're trying to work towards that. I know that you're working with the chief pilots, that you have this new visioning process of how you and Hardy are going to be doing more of that. I know when 10 of us went to meet with NetJets in Columbus, all of a sudden they started working on a special. And I think that showing our focus as a board and as an airport can have an effect, but we have to show those chief pilots that we want it. In pilot education, some more of the aspects that I wrote down, and in terms of the differential pricing for fuel, services, landing fees, for holidays and weekends, we have to pay a premium for time and a half on people. And can we set up a different sort of pricing structure, which I know you're probably going to address when you get to the rates, fees, and charges, and that we'll be seeing that somewhere in April, I think you said. So, I just picked some of them, but you've got my bullet list, so please include those. I kind of went through it for anybody else who hadn't read them online, so I went through some of them.
That's good. It seems like there's a fair amount of overlap, especially the hangar thing keeps bubbling up. It sounds like there needs to be a lot of policy discussion on that and revisiting different aspects of that. Anything else, Mary?
No, I wrote it all down, and thank you all.
Great.
Thank you.
So a lot of things that I had in mind have been covered. I guess the one thing that I'd really like the airport to focus on is the greenhouse gas. And partly because I've been sitting in on these CTA meetings, and I think right now we're sort of still in the strategic planning phase, and there's nothing really actionable. But I think once we're finished with that pretty soon, it's going to be, getting out and actually doing some things. And I would love to see. I love the idea of the solar, whether it's on shade hangars or not. I think that's something we should be more aggressive on. I also, there was an idea that was floated around the members of that group for storing large batteries on the backs of big flatbed trucks, and the airport's the perfect place to do it because it can just be out in the sun all day, and you can store enough energy on those batteries to drive to different neighborhoods when we have power that's out, and help those neighborhoods through some power outages. And there are just a lot of really innovative ideas, and I think the airport really I would really like to see the airport take a leading stance in some of this stuff that's being proposed.
Good.
And that's all I have.
Well, great. I think from, I think, some of the ones, at least from the staff perspective, I'll let Hardy and Dave and Kelly add anything they would like to, but the list that we kind of put together that's been in the past couple board books, where we really kind of try and break down the budget and sprinkle some of those goals, throughout, what we want to work on or what we feel like we need to concentrate on. That's what you have in front of you. And I'll work some of that into, like the master plan and some of they're already there. We've already talked about those and how to update, implement the allocation study and rates, fees, and charges. We've already talked about that. Housing, we've talked about that. So, at least from my perspective, we've got some of those things in there. So maybe with that, is it all right if I just see if Dave, Hardy, or Kelly have anything else they want to add?
Yeah.
Dave Hoffman here. At the present time, I don't have anything specific that I'd like to get onto a bullet point, but I will consider it and catch up with Kevin on any items.
I will say one thing that Dave and I are working on that you should know is we did receive some BIL, the bipartisan infrastructure bill funding. And so there's about $260,000 that we can implement this year. Now, we don't have an AIP project this year, but as you see these goals, we may come forward with a couple of ideas on that.
Does that have to be something that's on our AIP, or is it something that can be used for solar?
We had a meeting. It may be able to be one of those things. It could be the loader. That was one of the things we were talking about. The loader that we were trying to get, we may be able to get federal funding to pay for that. But it could be some other things. But I had a meeting last week with Fernando they're not even 100% sure yet. They're waiting about another 2 weeks. They'll have more information on, do we have to have something that is on our ACIP or not?
The loader was more than that amount.
It was right about
240.
240, yeah. So it was right about in there.
God, Mary, you're too good.
Yeah, it was two something. But I just know when I saw how much money they allocated to us, it just about matched how much that piece of equipment costs. So anyways, we'll come forward with some ideas on that.
Dave Hoffman organized that.
What was that?
Dave Hoffman must have done that.
I'm here to help.
Kind of fit in. Hardy, what do you have? Hardy.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the discussion. It was great to hear from everybody. One thing I'm looking at in 2022 is succession planning. So what happens if staff members leave the airport, and how are we going to make sure the airport's sustainable? Thinking a lot about that. We have staff members who are coming up to that point in their careers where they can make decisions. So we're thinking a lot about that. We're also doing some training. So we have one new staff member. We have another staff member who just left, and we're potentially going to backfill that position. So we're looking at some staff training to train those new people as they come in to serve here at the airport. Flight procedures is our big push this year, trying to get that wrapped up, complete that work. And then flight safety, looking at some new initiatives to promote flight safety, both with our partners, Oakland Center, NorCal Tracon, our tower, the pilot community, and the corporate operators. And then we've been dealing a lot with tenant interface, kind of OBL, other business leases. So how we interact as an airport with people like Skydive Truckee, Tahoe, and Soar Truckee, and Sierra Aero. So we're working on that, and the board obviously is helping us through that process as we do some of the rate setting methodology. And then finally, we have just general tenant relationships with pilots and passengers, trying to make sure that we're communicating at a high level, understand what they need, understand maybe the deficiencies we have as an airport and how we can correct them. When we get misaligned on communication, stuff doesn't go well for anybody. And so we're just really trying to make sure we meet the needs of the flying, the pilots and the passengers on both sides, and keep the lines of communication open to serve them. So that's kind of what we're looking at from the AVCOM side today.
Thank you, Hardy. Excellent. I took some notes down here.
How do those fit as specificity? Are you looking at them as whole new goals? I'm trying to think of the framework that David brought up and we all kind of agreed with, how that fits in.
Yeah, so I wrote them under number 1, at least with succession planning, flight procedures, training. I mean, you could argue those go to all 3 to some extent, or 1 and 3. But for me, providing high quality services, and I look at, our whole community, both non-pilots, pilots, everybody. Succession planning is something we need to be thinking about, that we are thinking about, that we've been talking about internally. As you know, we have 2 employees that are departing, 1 retirement, and then 1 who just going for another opportunity. And there's others that are out there in the next 3-4 years. So we're thinking a lot about that.
Great. Kelly, do you have anything to add?
I would just probably echo what Hardy and Kevin were talking about with succession planning. Super important to me to make sure that we're thinking ahead about retention, motivation, the people we currently have that make this whole place amazing every single day, all day, and taking care of them.
And Kelly's going to be helping me with some of the rates, fees, and charges stuff. And, she's got lots of skills there and putting together this landing fee concept and some of the other things. And so, yeah, she'll be helping out with some of those things too.
And I don't know if this falls into a goal, but you had talked about how Kelly's kind of revamping the budget to be more parallel, so that if we do a cost allocation again in 5 years or 3 years or whatever, that you had talked about, you were kind of updating it. Is that a goal per se, or is that just an internal thing?
Well, internally, it's more of how be hard to build the budget exactly like the allocation study, but as we go through and do our budgeting, and I'll let Kelly answer this question, but if we do an allocation study again, or when we kind of learn a lot each through that process of how we group information, so it's easy to kick off another one if that's what we want to do. But Kelly, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, our budget will never match the allocation study. It doesn't match right now because we moved a bunch of stuff backwards that wasn't actually capitalized for this current study that will be capitalized in this 2021 year-end close process. So, it's never going to look apples to apples to the GL and the audited financials. What I was talking about is that in our actuals, so not the budget, but what I put out to y'all every month, the financials, the actual financials, I'm working on putting in the foregone revenue that we've talked about in the past. So, if we charge X amount to the nonprofits in the warehouse, what would market value really be? And then showing that foregone revenue so that we could kind of see an all-in picture.
Right, that's right. Thank you.
Actuals, that won't be reflected in the budget.
Yeah, those are the things that the allocation study kind of taught us, that we can, as we're doing financials, we can have those there. Good. Do I have any other staff that's listening in that has any other things they want to convey? Can't see the full list, but
Stacy, do you have anything to add?
Dr. Rolf, not at this time, but I really appreciate your asking.
Great, thank you.
I think that's it for us. So just public comment would be next, I think.
Okay, is there any public comment on this issue? Lance Welsh.
I'm not sure what this issue is in the context, but I was just going to quickly ask for more understanding about the new runway proposal. We already make slight turns upon departure for noise abatement, which is fairly standard procedure at noise-sensitive airports and results in pretty much the same flight path as pointing the new runway. And it's safer than losing the orthogonal runways, which helps mitigate crosswinds. So if and when that's an appropriate thing to ask or just make a comment on, consider that done. And by the way, so just thanks for the meeting. It's nice to see so many issues so reasonably discussed.
Yeah, maybe I could plug our March 9th ACT meeting. where we are going to unveil, or I shouldn't say unveil, but we're going to talk about this third runway and kind of what it is and where it is and kind of how it flows. And then we've got, I think, the dates. It's actually in the Wednesday meeting. We're looking at 2 dates in March, or April and May. It'd be the first week of May, the last week of April, for public outreach meetings on those. And so we're still working those through. They're in the board packet that went out on Friday. We got to talk about those with the board on Wednesday. But we're very close to putting out the dates of when we'll have some actual workshops on those master plans. And then also March 9th would be a great time for anyone to come in, and we'll start talking about what that third runway looks like.
Kevin, can I just add to that? Because I'm seeing trend, and I don't know where this misinformation is coming from. The discussion of 1634 in no way is about removing either of the 2 runways we've got now. 51% of the time at our airport, the winds are calm. We're not taking anybody's crosswind opportunities away. None of that is being jeopardized. I don't know why somebody is out there trying to throw a wrench into this discussion by telling people stuff that is not true.
Yeah, that's very true, and we can't take it away. I mean, that's a federally funded runway. We're not in a position where that runway is not going anywhere. And that's why it'd be great to come to the 9th and tell everyone to come, so you can see the alignment. We don't have all the details worked out, but you can see the alignment and the geometry for the FAA standards works. And so we're just going to lay it out there and let everyone and collect everyone's information on it. That's part of this outreach thing that we're doing over the next couple of months.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks a lot for clarifying that.
Sure.
Is there any other public comment? It says Lynn Meadows, but I'm guessing it's Tom. Hello, Tom?
Yep, Tom. Or Lynn?
He's on mute.
Good grief.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Okay. I am angry. I am seething. I am absolutely incensed that this board places a higher priority on giving away public money than your duly elected priority to maintain the airport infrastructure. In the past, I've heard talk of tearing down tens of millions of dollars worth of hangars in order to build shade hangars. Shade hangars. This is not Phoenix. This is not Los Angeles. It's Las Vegas. I don't care what they do in Aspen. How many of you have carports instead of garages for your vehicles? I bet nary one of you keeps your vehicles out in the elements. I don't think the shade hangars are good. Here's a quote. I suggest that we rethink this anyway so that we can establish a culture that is clear, understandable, and can survive elections. Is it more important that you get reelected so that you can continue placing priority on giving away money intended for the maintenance of this airport than it is to maintain the airport? It is blatantly apparent that giving away millions of dollars of public money is more important than maintaining the airport infrastructure. Then there's that third runway. I can see the people at the San Francisco FAA ADO rolling on the floor laughing at a master plan that includes a third runway for which there is no reason. I have decided not to use words such as ridiculous, ludicrous, cockamamie, bizarre, comical, farcical, foolish, stupid, and fiscally irresponsible, so I shall just calmly state that the third runway is not a good idea. By the way, I could have spoken those same adjectives about the shade hangars, but I didn't. Do y'all know that the prevailing winds here are from the southwest? That proposed runway is directly across the prevailing winds. Doesn't matter if winds calm at 51% of the time. When the wind is up, It's from the southwest. And runway 20 is just fine. That runway would destroy a huge amount of raw land. It would put 2 businesses out of business. It would create potential hazardous departures and would cost zillions of dollars, all in the name of noise abatement. Do you really think that FAA would squander 40 or million more dollars just to build a runway like that? Millions of dollars, millions of dollars of public money destined for the airport's use is being hijacked and spewed out all over the district and beyond. That money belongs to the airport and should be used on the airport. That's all.
Thank you, Tom. I thought I saw another hand earlier.
Robert Esque.
Robert? Oh, there we go.
Yes, hello. I had a couple comments. One, I'm interested in seeing the wind analysis that you guys did, and I was wondering if the wind analysis includes 24-hour time schedule or just during the hours that you want us to be flying during the daytime, because I think that is very common for the wind to die down in the evenings and be blowing during the day. Secondly, I appreciate some of the clarification around, not wanting to tear down hangars for the shade hangar idea. That's something that I had not seen or heard before, and I've attended multiple meetings in the past. So I think the additional clarification you guys can give on those types of topics will help us to understand where you're coming from. I think, the runway diagram that I've seen for the 1634 orientation is rather peculiar in that it introduces a number of new hotspots. And in looking at some of the runway design documentations from the FAA, they create a lot of emphasis on runway design, airport design, reduction of hotspots, increase of visibility, perpendicular runways when they have to cross, and those sorts of things. And the board has done in the past a number of improvement projects to reduce runway incursion risk. For example, the hangar row that I'm in, Kilo, recently had a change in the taxiway Charlie to reduce straight, being able to taxi straight from the hangar row right onto the runway, which I think is a good idea. And those types of changes have shown that the board understands that there are risks involved with creating the layout of the airport. Things like the high-speed taxiway have been removed to reduce the risk. That was a good idea. And those are all in line with the FAA design criteria that they put out for runway designs. But the new runways are, I know the taxiway diagrams have not been fully fleshed out. There's just an overlay, but it increases a number of new problems with converging thresholds. You have non-perpendicular runway angles. You have terrain to deal with that's new, crosswinds and these other things. And so I'm curious to see, to know what the benefit is of the new runway for all of the grief and potential risk that it may introduce for the next 30 years.
Thank you.
I can just say we can provide that wind study. We'll get it out. We sent that out to the board. I think it's actually in some of our public documents on our board information link, but I can send that out to anyone who wants it.
And it's broken out in 3-hour increments.
It is. We looked at calm wind, subtracting out the hours we're telling people don't fly. When we say that calm winds are 50+% of the time, we're talking about the times we're telling people, that we want you to fly, not at 2 in the morning.
Sure, thank you.
So we'll send that out.
And that's something you'll probably be addressing that at your on the 9th.
On the 9th,
and it
actually
That's the ACT meeting on
That's
the
the
9th.
ACT meeting, yeah.
Everybody's saying the 9th, and I hadn't heard the word ACT, but I assumed that
ACT.
was it.
Yeah, the ACT meeting on the 9th.
Yeah, I would, if I could just encourage everybody to attend ACT meetings where you can actually get factual information instead of the information that is being regurgitated from people in the community who have already made decisions about stuff that even we and our airport engineers are not smart enough to figure out yet.
Yeah.
So show up to those meetings, participate in those meetings, and stop regurgitating misinformation.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. We really want to have these conversations and dialogue, and I have seen and had been sent a lot of information that is not accurate. And so I would strongly encourage what Director Diamond is saying. Come talk to us on the 9th. We're going to talk about it again on the 13th of April. Our next 2 ACT meetings will be on this master plan, and then we're going to go to 2 public workshops on it at the end of April and early May. And then there'll be a report that'll come out of that in May and June that we will submit to the FAA. And the FAA is aware of all these things we're talking about. They're not surprised by any of the conversations that we're having. And we're going to leave no stone unturned with all the issues that we've been talking about over this summer of options that are available as part of a master plan update. So I'd love to hear and talk to everybody about this stuff.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, is there any other public comment?
Over the summer of options that are available as part of a master plan update.
Well, just maybe let me ask if there is anything about the proposal that is consumable right now and factual so that we don't have this problem instead of waiting until March 9th.
Any other public comments?
We got who are we getting some feedback from? Can we mute them?
Lance and Norm.
Oh, so maybe you could mute them.
Have this problem instead of waiting until March 9th.
Any other public comments?
All right. Yeah, so I'll tell you right now, a lot of these are still ideas and things that are in development. What I would tell you, for anyone that wants more information, come in and talk with me and meet with me. I don't have like a packet of information I can give you right at this minute. That's being developed as we speak, as we're studying and going through our master plan process. But we will have some good information, just here in another week and a half that you'll be able to, some deliverables on that.
Okay, Lance, your hand is still up. Are you, oh no.
That was a thumbs up to say, yeah, got it. Thank you.
I got it. Okay, cool.
I look forward to being able to read something from you guys.
Yeah, I'll get this, that wind study, we'll get that posted on our news link for anyone that's here if they want to see that. That's the first thing you can kind of look at.
Okay, is that it for public comment? Anyone else? I really appreciate the public comment that we've had today and from the staff as well.
Yeah, it's great input.
Yeah.
So I think maybe, Kat, some next steps. I've got all this information and I'm going to work with my staff and we'll put together a bullet point list that kind of goes through these 3 categories. And then I'll try and craft it somewhat like what we did last year with those goal sheets with, work plan, action steps, timelines. But the timelines, obviously the board will have to decide that, but I'll have that on the March agenda to be able to, and then I'll pick out of that is kind of what Director Diamond was saying is, here are some things that we as staff are already programmed in. We're tackling these things right now, and here's what we think we can work into our work program going out over the next 6 to 8 months or through the year. Some of these are just questions, just that I can go get the answer and send it out. So those will be easy. That we'll tackle those right away.
Okay. All right, so that concludes our board workshop on goal setting. We have a board meeting in 2 days at 4:30. So I hope that anyone who wants to attend will attend. And I guess the rest of you guys will see in closed session Do you want to take it's 4:15. Do you want to take a 5-minute break before we come back?
I don't think we can do it. We can't do it until 4:30, right? Just because it's agendized?
Oh, so we have to. Okay, you're right. So we'll all come back at 4:30. So we get a
point of order, ma'am.
President Roll, before we do that, would recommend we take public comment on those closed session items.
Oh, on the closed session items? Yes. Is there any public comment on the closed session items?
No, but are there any emailed public comments?
Yeah, there are email public comments. We made a decision as a board last month to distribute those amongst the board, but not to read them at the board meetings.
And Tom, just FYI, that's standard practice across all the public agencies. We were one of the only ones reading emails, but those are provided to all the board.
Are they provided to the other public members who can hear the public comments?
No.
How do we know what the comments are?
So maybe Josh, maybe you can answer that question. The correspondence that are sent out, I mean, the whole purpose of these public meetings is for people to come and interact and address their elected officials. But the amount of time that it requires to read all those emails, and again, that's why it's not done. We were one of the only ones that was doing it. And in my 26-year public sector career, we've not done it in any other place I've worked either. We strongly encourage people to come and talk to us, come to the board meetings. And if you can't, then you can send your comments directly to your elected officials, which is what many people did, and they have all those. I don't know, Josh, if you had anything else you wanted to add.
No, Kevin, I think you did a good job covering it. The only thing I would add is those are public records if somebody would like to make a request.
Yeah, you can have them if you want them.
I would just say it would be nice to have, sorry, David, it would be nice to have them available publicly without having to request them, just so we have a greater ability to share information. I think that would help the unfortunate rise of disinformation or misinformation to have something where, you know, these publications and these conversations can be put out there for us to see, instead of leaving us to kind of guess what's going on. I understand you're not ready with the development plan yet, but when the rumors start getting out ahead of the publications, the formal plans, then that's when trouble kind of begins.
Can I just add that what are the other, because I agree, when we had this discussion, one of my concerns is I would love for these comments to be available publicly, not because incidentally that they would prevent misinformation. In fact, many of the public comments are absolutely riddled with misinformation. So I'm more eager to find out what the source of this information is and see what we can do about that. But the other issue is that our board book has to be posted several days before the meeting. We can't, for public comment that comes in hours before the meeting, we can't legally do anything with this. So this is a state of California thing. If it's not in by the board book, it's not part of the board book. So I think, and that goes to what Kevin and Josh were saying about the idea of public comment, is that it is real time and it's live and it's at the meeting.
And they come in all the time.
Can we include them at the end of the minutes?
You know, I would probably recommend that we not attach all those to the minutes, because I just think it's a minutes best practice, but we definitely can include it with all the board book materials, so that if someone wanted to go on and click on the this meeting agenda, we can post all those with the minutes with all that stuff, but they're not like part of the minutes, which would be my suggestion.
But that would be after the meeting. That would be like on the next agenda.
Yeah, because public comments still coming in. We're still getting them during the meeting.
I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, we
Josh, do you have anything to add to that?
What was that?
I was asking Josh if he had any thoughts on how how to put those out publicly.
Yeah, I think if the board would like us to put those on publicly, I think, Kevin and David's thoughts is probably the easiest way to handle it, and the one I see most often by other agencies. We can just post a link online and people who like to view them can.
Okay. All right, good.
I maybe just before we leave, because I want to make sure it's crystal clear that, and I don't mean to speak for the board, but the board gets all those and reads them. So we don't want to give the impression that now we're not looking or considering those. No, we're looking at all of them, but we just can't spend 40 to 45 minutes in a board meeting reading emails, which is what we've had to do in past meetings, when we want to be able to talk and dialogue and have discussion and have you participate is I think the goal. Did I get that accurate from the board perspective? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I actually like David Diamond's comment about it being a way to clamp down perhaps on the source of some of this information, is to have people be accountable for what they write.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right.
Should we make a motion to adjourn? I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Well, apologies. This is one where we are going to need to go into closed session and then come back. Closed session.
You want to adjourn this?
It's not
meeting.
over.
Yeah, sorry. Apologies. Yeah.
So
It's
we
okay.
have to log into this again?
There's another link there's a different link that was sent out a little bit later.
That, but do we have to come back into this meeting?
We got to come back to this meeting and report out. So this meeting will leave and go to the other link.
Josh, you're consistent.
Can we go directly into that, or do we need to wait till 4:30?
I think technically we can move in there now. I think by the time we get everyone moved over, we'll be very close to 4:30 and would be able to start the conversation.
Okay.
I'm going to take a 5-minute break if that's okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll see y'all over there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think we've formally adjourned.
Oh,
we aren't adjourning.
Oh, we're not adjourning. Okay.
You got to take comment on the closed session item. You have to read the header and, conference with legal counsel, read that part, tab 03, and then take public comment.
You took public comment on that already.
Yeah, I think we did take public comment on that. I think we're President Reauthorize, we're adjourning to closed session, and then we will come back from closed session back into the open session, announce any reportable action, and then we can have a formal motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.